you to understand the basics of our district's RTI approach to reading. And two, we want you to understand how you can use the knowledge that you've developed in the last few years around using the steps of DataWise to help you more effectively implement that RTI model. So those are our goals for today. So I'd like to have you stop for just a minute and just, I think there's some note paper on your tables, and just make a quick list of what you know about RTI. So we're going to start by talking to you about the purpose of RTI, its goals, and some basics of how it's implemented. So take a minute and read this paragraph that describes the purpose of RTI. And when you're finished, would you take just a minute or so to kind of summarize your reaction to it? Things that came up for me when I first read that was, boy, that sounds like what I went to school every single day to do. Every day I walked into my classroom, my goal was to provide my students with the best opportunities to succeed. I was always thinking about those kids that had learning behavior problems and trying to, figure out how I was going to deal with that in the classroom. And I was always trying to make sure that my kids got appropriate instruction. Did anybody have a similar reaction, that they felt that that kind of described the heart of the work that we do right now? What RTI does is I think it just makes it more possible for us to achieve these goals. Because what happened is every time I tried this, I always felt like I fell short. Because I didn't, as a single teacher in a classroom with my door closed, I just wasn't possible to meet the needs of all the students. So what we'll talk about as we share with you the basics of RTI is how it's structured in a way to give us as teachers a fighting chance to do the work that we really want to do, which is make a difference in the outcomes in children's learning about it. In the 1990s, it became increasingly clear throughout the country that we weren't doing a very good job of identifying students with learning disabilities because we were noticing certain things. First of all, we were noticing that we were kind of had this wait till they fail approach. As an old first grade teacher, I would know some kids that needed to begin this referral process, but guess what the standard line was? It was, wait till grade 3. So all across the country, that was kind of the way it was dealt with. And so we realized that we were waiting for kids to fail before we were setting up any kind of way to intervene and change those outcomes. The other thing that was happening across the country is that every state had their own system. So there was great variability in how students were being identified as having learning disabilities. And the last thing, that there was a disproportionate number of minority students being identified using the old process. So because of that, there was quite a lot of interest in the field, in the educational research field, to start trying to build a better system for identifying students with learning disabilities. And out of that came this RTI model. So what it stressed was, it was stressing bringing all of our resources together, special ed, classroom, and all the specialists in the building coming together to make a common structure with our common system in your building for dealing with students that were having learning difficulties or behavior problems. So basically what came out of this RTI, came out of the reauthorization of the IDEA Act in 2004, was this refocusing that it wasn't just about special ed, but that if we intervene early and set up an effective system school-wide, we can make a difference in the outcomes for students. So the RTI model urges early identification of students. It recommends a 3-tier approach to reading or to any type of instruction. There's an ongoing use of data and constant reevaluating of instruction. And it's that important integration of services. Our resources are limited in the building, so we know if we bring those resources together, we have a better ability to make a system that's going to make a difference. The goal is, if you intervene early and provide students with the instructional opportunities that they need, that we can decrease the number of children who qualify as learning disabled. Because sometimes it's an instructional issue. It's just not a learning issue. We have to make sure that they have the appropriate instruction and have had the opportunity to learn before we can really determine if they're learning disabled. Does that help? The goals of RTI is to integrate all the resources in a building to minimize the risk for long-term consequences associated with poor learning or behavior outcomes. RTI gives us to more accurately identify students for special ed.